Hello and welcome. My name's George, and my channel's all about helping you record and produce your best music in your home studio. Today, we're going to be looking at the Shure SM7B microphone, and we're going to go over everything you need to know to record vocals with this microphone. So let's dive in. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need to talk about is what other gear you might need to go along with this microphone. The first thing you're going to need is a way to mount the microphone. So either a mic stand, so something like this, or if you're recording podcasts, for example, while sitting at a desk, then you can get a desk-mounted stand such as this one. This is the Rode PSA-1 desktop stand. Now, one thing to mention between these two different stands is they have a different thread pitch on the top here where the microphone screws in. So on the regular microphone stand, we have a larger 5/8 thread, and on this one we have a 3/8 thread. So right out of the box, the SM7 will thread right onto a regular microphone stand. And we can just spin that on like so. But if we want to mount it to the desktop stand, then we have to use this little adapter, which also comes with the microphone. So if you're using the adapter, you want to make sure that the notched end is facing upwards towards you, and then you can just screw that in to the top, and you can use either a coin to tighten it or a screwdriver, flathead screwdriver will work as well. So once you have your microphone mounted to a stand, then the next thing you're going to need is an XLR mic cable like this. You'll have two different ends. So one end will be a female end and one end will be the male end. So the female end will go into the microphone side, and the male end will plug into your audio interface or preamp. Now, if you're plugging the mic directly into an audio interface, then you'll only need one XLR cable. But if you're using something like a Cloudlifter, which we'll talk about a little bit later, then you're going to need two XLR microphone cables. And the last thing you're going to need, like I just mentioned, is an audio interface. So that's going to convert the analog signal of your microphone into a digital signal to be able to get that into your computer and record your voice into your DAW. So now that we have the microphone all hooked up, the next thing to talk about are the windscreens that come with the microphone. So the one you're most likely to use most of the time will look like this. So this is a windscreen that helps cut down on bursts of air when speaking into the microphone. And for normal operation, this one is probably the one you'll be using the most. Now, we've also got this much bigger windscreen that also comes with the microphone. Now, this one's going to be useful if you're prone to speaking with lots of plosives, and plosives are from words with the letter P, for example, and those cause big breaths of air that sometimes are going to bottom out the diaphragm on your microphone, and that just doesn't sound very good. So this helps cut those big breaths of air down a lot. The one thing to note about when using this one is it's going to cut down the higher frequencies a little bit and might muffle your voice just a little bit. So that's something to be aware of if you decide to use this windscreen. For normal volume speaking, I would suggest just going with the regular smaller windscreen. But if you find yourself getting really animated and get really close to the mic, then you can give the bigger, thicker one a try. And to swap these out, it's real easy. You just want to make sure that you grip the plastic base of the microphone, of the windscreen rather, and pull that out. And this is what the microphone looks like without the windscreen. And then you can just slide the bigger one on like so. Now, if you're using this microphone to record vocals, then something to try is actually removing the windscreen altogether and using what's called a pop filter, which looks like this. So removing the windscreen, again, is going to help kind of open up and brighten up the sound a little bit more. But since we still want to reduce plosives, we're going to use this pop filter and place this a few inches away from the microphone. So we still get the benefit of cutting down on plosives, but we won't be muffling the sound at all with the windscreen. So for studio use when recording vocals, this is the option I would recommend. Obviously, if you're on camera and recording a podcast or things like that, then you probably don't want this big pop filter in front of your face. So in that scenario, that's when I would use a windscreen instead. Now, the next thing to talk about is distance from the microphone. And this is going to depend a little bit from the application. So if you're just recording voice like I am right now, then you can get fairly close to the microphone, even just 1 or 2 inches away. And the closer you get to the microphone, the more bass sound you're going to get in your voice. So if you want a real deep radio voice, then you can get really close to the microphone. But again, be aware that the closer you get, the more prone you're going to be to those plosives. So if you do get really close, and as I said before, are an animated speaker, then once again, consider the bigger windscreen. But for most applications, kind of 2 inches away, speaking is going to be great, and you're going to get a nice balanced sound out of that. Now for singing, I would suggest backing off a little bit more, anywhere from 3 to 6 inches away from the mic. And using the pop filter, like I suggested before, is going to help you keep that distance. So you can place the pop filter maybe 1 or 2 inches off of the mic, and then as a singer, another 1 or 2 inches away from the pop filter itself. And that's going to give you a nice distance from the microphone without being too close and having to worry about those plosives that we talked about earlier. Okay, so next we need to talk about gain for this microphone. So this is a pretty gain-hungry microphone, which means you're going to have to turn the knob on your preamp pretty high to get a healthy signal into your computer from this microphone. Shure recommends that you have at least 60 dB of gain available on your preamps, but you can get away with interfaces that have slightly less than that. The one thing to be aware of is as you turn your preamp gain all the way up, on cheaper interfaces, you'll get a lot of hiss and noise floor at the very top there. So that's one thing to be aware of. And a lot of the times when you hear people talking about this microphone, they'll tell you that you need one of these, which is a Cloudlifter. And what this does is this is going to add 20 decibels of gain into your signal path. So you would plug your microphone in this, and then you would plug the other end into your audio interface or your preamp, and this will boost the signal by 20 dB. And one of the useful things with this is it's boosting nice, clean gain. So you don't have to boost your preamp as much. And then so you're going to avoid kind of that hiss that you get at the very top of your preamp. With that being said, with most decent preamps, you don't really need this Cloudlifter. This is just a bit of a nice to have, or it'll help you in the event that your preamp just doesn't have enough gain. But with most modern audio interfaces, that's not usually a problem. But don't be surprised if you do have to crank the gain on your audio interface almost all the way to the top. Now, when you are setting your gain, you want to slowly turn the gain on your preamp, on your audio interface. Start turning that all the way up. And you want to aim to be around -18 on the meters in your DAW. In the loudest parts of your song, you can go up to -10, but on average, you kind of want to be around that -18 zone, and then that will give you some wiggle room so that you're not peaking. If you start singing louder in the chorus, for example, you have some headroom that you can go to before you start clipping and hearing some audible distortion in your recording. And then after, when you're mixing, you can boost that signal using compressors and limiters as well. So if it seems a little bit quiet, you can always bring that up later in the mixing process. If you're using this microphone for something like a Zoom call, for example, and you don't have the ability to put in any post-processing, well, then you can consider boosting your gain a little bit more so that the volume's a little bit louder from the get-go. But just be aware that you might be a bit more prone to clipping and distortion if you start to suddenly raise your voice. Then the last thing I want to go over on the microphone are some of the switches available to us on the back of the microphone. So we have the first switch, a bass roll off. So that's going to cut down some of the low frequencies for the microphone. So this would be useful if you find that your voice is too bassy and you want to cut that down a little bit, then you can turn the bass roll off on. The next switch is a high presence boost. So this kind of does the opposite. This is going to boost the higher end range of your voice and make it feel a bit brighter and a bit more present. So that switch in particular is very helpful for recording vocals for voice in a song and you want it to cut through the mix. In that case, I would recommend turning on the presence boost, and so you get that nice upfront vocal sound. In that same scenario, I would generally put the roll off on as well and filter out some of those low frequencies, and that'll just leave some room in the lower frequencies for instruments like bass and kick drum. So it'll help those lower frequency instruments come through, and then the presence boost will help your voice carry above all the rest of those instruments as well. In podcasting, however, you might want to leave that bass roll off if you kind of want that deep radio voice. I usually have it turned on because I find that it's a little bit too deep, but that'll be kind of a personal choice depending on the sound you're going for, and as well as just the sound of your voice to begin with. I also generally leave the presence boost off when just recording voice because I find it just gets a little bit too bright when it's just a voice on its own. But when it comes to singing with the rest of a band in, then that's when the presence boost is really helpful. So I'm going to switch out this microphone for the SM7 so you can hear the differences in the tonal characteristics in my voice depending on how we have the different switches set up. Okay, so now I have the Shure SM7B all set up, and this is what my voice sounds like with the bass roll off as well as the presence boost off as well. Next, this is what my voice sounds like with the bass roll off on and the presence boost off. So you should hear that my voice lost a little bit of that bassiness and low end with that low roll off switch turned on. Now, this is what my voice sounds like with the bass roll off, but the presence boost on. So you should hear that my voice got a little bit brighter once we activated that presence boost. And now this is what my voice sounds like with the bass roll off on, as well as the presence boost on. So again, so now we've got a little bit of that bass is going to be tamed a little bit, and my presence boost is on, so that's just going to brighten up my vocals a little bit as well. Now I've returned back to my preferred setting, which is the bass roll off on and the presence boost flat. And to change the settings, I usually just use a little pencil like this, or you can use a screwdriver and you just lift the switches up or down depending on the position you want to put them in. So I hope that's been helpful in getting you set up with your Shure SM7B. If you're going to be doing recordings in Logic Pro and want to speed up your workflow, don't forget to download my free Logic Pro hotkey cheat sheet by following the link in the description below. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave those in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next one.